You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. As you may know, we've been on hiatus over the holidays, and we're back with a renewed fighting spirit, rested and raring to go. And this program pledges in 2017 that not only will we be, a la the Women's Media Center motto, busy and making sure that women are visible and powerful in the media, but also making sure, I pledge, on this program, that we will make democracy and true free speech and freedom of the press, an inclusive and representative press, visible and power in all our lives as we fight any incursions on any of the above. So, that said, as my New Year's pledge, let's get to it. We start the year with the arts because that's what tyrannies go after first, and autocrats and authoritarians, journalism and artists. So we start with artists, and also the other reason is that art reminds us not only what we're fighting against, but most important, what we're fighting for. We start with an artist, and we move on to a 25-year-old woman who stood up against China. So, we've got a good program for you today, and lots of other little surprises. Let's get to it, and first, let's go, inside the headlines. News happened all over the planet, of course, but today I'm afraid we have to focus at home simply to catch up, because here news has been breaking so fast that the ground is littered with dangerous shards of broken news. There was the seismic report co-delivered by the heads of all U.S. intelligence agencies, confirming Russian interference with our elections as being unprecedented in scale after Russian President Putin had ordered a, quote, comprehensive cyber campaign to elect Trump, discredit Hillary Clinton, and disrupt American democracy. They were betting that, quote, educated youth in America could be persuaded to vote for Trump as a protest against the Washington establishment. All those idealistic purists ignorant that they were pawns in a game of Russian roulette. We also learned that senior officials in the Russian government celebrated when Trump won and congratulated themselves for his victory. We were treated to the sight of FBI Director James Comey testifying before Congress that he couldn't release further details because he simply couldn't ever comment on an investigation while it was in progress. This prompted some senators to note the irony in that statement, given Comey's pre-election announcement of revived investigations into Hillary's emails, an announcement that likely cost her the presidency. Although that investigation of her, like all the others, turned up nothing at all. The Russians reportedly also developed compromising evidence to use against Trump himself, such as alleged video of his hotel room during a visit of his to Moscow, a room he'd had requested since he'd heard that President Obama and the First Lady had once stayed there. According to the reported but as yet independently unverified story, Trump hired prostituted women to urinate on the bed so as to defile where the Obamas had slept, while he watched. Hail to the creep. Let's see, we also learned that Trump still won't sell his business or place his assets in a blind trust or release his tax returns despite the Government Ethics Office demanding he do so. But he is already laying the groundwork for a 2020 re-election bid, keeping his Manhattan campaign headquarters open as he assumes the presidency. He probably won't keep it open after the 2020 election because by then, hey, he'll have declared himself president for life, so won't need to worry about bothersome campaigning. Speaking of elections, when the House had to rule on the validity of electoral votes, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee was one of the representatives who challenged that validity. She cited research by a group of independent lawyers who discovered that as many as 50, that's 50 of the Republican electors had been ineligible to serve because they were state legislators and office holders in states prohibiting people from holding two public offices at the same time. Still, other electors violated residency requirements. Congresswoman Lee's objection was overruled. This past week also saw a procession of cabinet nominees trooping through Senate hearings. Supposedly moderate Republicans, or is that phrase now oxymoronic? Anyway, like Susan Collins of Maine, well, she warmly praised Attorney General nominee and segregationist Senator Jeff Sessions of Alabama for his gasp civil rights record, while legendary activist Georgia Congressman John Lewis plus a sitting Senator, Cory Booker from New Jersey, both testified, exposing Sessions for who he really is. In all, the committee Democrats have been quite mild to the nominees. Clearly, avalanches of emails, calls, and letters need to be lobbed at ostensibly progressive senators and congresspeople to heat their blood to room temperature, much less boiling point. Oh yes, and Trump held his first press conference since July in a room filled with applauding staffers, at which he denounced the press, answered not one question directly or substantively, and refused to even call on CNN because they were fake news and hadn't been nice to him. But wait, there's some good stuff. You remember that Trump was voted in as the most unpopular president-elect in modern history? Well, a reliable new poll from Quinnipiac University shows a further drop of confidence in views of his honesty, leadership skills, compassion for average Americans, level-headedness, and ability to unite the country. Also, while 40% had believed his policies would help their personal financial situation before the election, that's now dropped to 27%. Rust Belt white guys, you've been had. That general public dislike of Trump is, of course, multiplied among artists, and it's not only Meryl Streep's eloquent remarks at the Golden Globe Awards. Trump cannot find one name musician to perform at his inauguration. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir is going to perform, but one member resigned from the choir rather than do so, comparing the idea of playing for Trump to throwing roses at Hitler. Then there's the Rockette controversy. The Madison Square Garden company that owns the Rockettes and the Dancers Union together announced that the women would perform at the inaugural without telling the women. The Washington Post reported that one gutsy Rockette, Phoebe Pearl, had posted on Instagram, quote, "The women I work with are intelligent and full of love, and the decision of performing for a man that stands for everything we're against is appalling." She closed her post with #NotMyPresident. Then the January issue of Marie Claire magazine ran an interview with another Rockette who used the pseudonym Mary. She was quoted as saying, "If I have to lose my job over this, I will." Management, union representatives, and the women appear to now have come to an agreement that participation can be voluntary. That's a dramatic shift from the original edict. Mary said, quote, "There's a divide in the company now, though. That saddens me most. There's the percentage that said yes, for whatever reason, because they're young and uninformed, or they think it's a chance to move up in the company when other people turned it down. No women of color have signed up to perform. And we have immigrants in the show. This is a women's rights issue. This is an issue," Mary continues, "of racism and sexism, much bigger than politics." Close quote. Interestingly, since the controversy went public, there have been a lot of empty seats right during the famed Christmas show season, when the house is always packed. Mary's not surprised. Apparently, quite a few people are in sympathy with the Rockettes' desire to aim their precision, synchronized high kicks in the right direction. We have to take a short break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, but I will be right back with a woman who has won an Oscar, a Grammy, a Golden Globe, and feminism. So don't go away.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. And now for my first guest of 2017, we're starting off musically, Carole Bayer Sager. Carole is an American lyricist, a singer, a songwriter, and you know her songs. She is the winner of an Oscar after 6 Oscar nominations, of a Grammy out of 9 nominations, and 2 Golden Globes out of 7 nominations. She was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 1987. The Oscar that she won was for Best Song in 1981 for the theme for the movie Arthur. And the Grammy was for Song of the Year in 1987 for the song That's What Friends Are For, which she co-wrote with Burt Bacharach when they were married. Oh my God, the people that she has collaborated with either in writing songs or plays, Neil Simon, or the people who have sung her songs are just amazing. Dionne Warwick, Chaka Khan, Bette Midler, Sonny and Cher, Petula Clark, Phil Collins, Stevie Wonder, Gladys Knight, Elton John. Oh, it just goes on and on. She wrote the lyrics for the stage musical They're Playing Our Song with Neil Simon. She was in a romantic relationship with the composer Marvin Hamlisch after her marriage with Andrew Sager, and then she went on to marry composer and pianist Burt Bacharach. She survived all of that to write a terrific memoir called They're Playing Our Song, a memoir, which she's here to talk about with us today. Here is author Carole Bayer Sager. Carole, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you, Robin.
This is a dangerously vulnerable and brave book. They're playing our song, a memoir, and of course you've written, I think it's like 400 songs, and you've received all these awards, Grammys and Golden Globes and Oscars, and you're in the Songwriters Hall of Fame, all of it, and yet this story is one of a profoundly intelligent but insecure woman who got lost repeatedly in the careers of the various men she was with, which is the story of a lot of other women. So thanks for that honesty.
Well, you're welcome. I felt if I was going to write my life, I had to be brutally honest about it. Otherwise, one, what's the point? And two, I felt like in sharing my own insecurities and anxieties which were at their height earlier, in fact. I mean, my life sort of had an upward trajectory because although it took a while to move to the upward part, but you know, my early days were just filled with fear and anxiety and a lack of a strong sense of self. So it was so easy for me to give that self away with each man that I had relationships with. So it's really not always their fault at all. It's the fault of me not being, not standing up for my own self, which was still being formed. Right.
Well, yes, but on the other hand, I mean, you also had working relationships with these men. Marvin Hamlisch, who you wrote songs with, and who it turns out may have been bipolar. And then you were married to Burt Bacharach, of course, for years. And I'm reading in the book that when you were being married, and it came his turn to say the vows, instead of saying I do or I will, he said, I'll try, which gives you.
And you know what's so funny about that? I was so happy he was marrying me. I never even heard that. I just was like so happy that we were getting married. It was my friend Neil Diamond who heard him say, there was only 6 of us at the wedding, and Neil Diamond heard him say, "I'll try," and went, "Holy shit!" And then
Yeah.
he said,
yeah. Oh my God.
But he also said that Bert became his hero in that moment because he'd never heard that in his life. But what's so funny is I didn't even hear him say it. I was just so lost in the romance of the fact that he was, oh wow, Bert's marrying me, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because I see this in my own writing in my former marriage. I've been happily divorced for 20 some odd years now, but there it was in my own writing before I didn't know what I knew, but it came out in the words. And some of these songs, I saw reflections of the girl I was who caught me by surprise, seeing a woman who's defined by you. I mean, those are your words.
Yes. That was Aretha Franklin's record of Someone Else's Eyes.
Right. You were the sun. I was the one who just revolved around you day and night. I got lost inside your name. That is the story of almost all women of a certain age, a certain generation, hopefully younger women, because of decades of the women's movement, don't quite have that same trajectory, but a hell of a lot still do.
Yes, I think it's unfortunate because we grow up on the romantic notion of Cinderella and being rescued by the prince and, all the fairy tales and all the stories that we learn as children and that our parents should kind of tell us is that, we'll be happy when we get married to a wonderful man, and that will complete us, as though we couldn't possibly be complete without some man's name,
What was a turning point for you where you began to see Carole Bayer Sager as the whole person that she is?
Well, unfortunately, but fortunately, it was later in my life than I would have hoped. I was in my 40s, and I'd had 2 failed relationships, and I felt like I hadn't been fully living my life. So much was lived in fear and a sort of I had a therapist along the way who said to me, because I had all these fears of dying and just not what you think about on most pretty sunny days, And
except that if you feel that you're not fully living, then the mind tends to gravitate toward fears of dying.
Exactly. And I had a therapist who said to me, "Carol, you're not afraid of dying. You're afraid of living." That was like, oh my God, that was an aha moment.
Yeah.
And I think there's no way to just snap in from one to the other.
Oh, of course not.
But I think as you start to really self-examine your non-life, and you start to take chances, and you start to push yourself, feel the fear and do it anyway, and to just every day do one more thing that challenges you. You start to build small little, like grains of sand. You build up self-esteem. By behaving as you would like to be, by acting as if, and letting the feelings follow. All those phrases that some of your listeners and I've heard through the years. They're true. They're really true. And all of a sudden, you start to like yourself a little more. and then I was very fortunate. I met a man who was probably the first adult man that ever came into my life. He wasn't an artist. He wasn't. He didn't need the muse of my lyrics to complete his songwriting process. He was just a complete adult who, what he said, he meant, and what he did, what he said he was going to do, he did, and it was like, oh wow, this is odd. In fact, the first time my little son, who at the time was 5, turning 6, kind of mouthed off to me, I heard this voice behind me say, "That's no way to talk to your mother." And I went, oh my God, what's that? I never had I never had a man like behind me, standing up for me, having my back.
Right. Right. It's a very gutsy story that you dare to tell. And we now know, of course, that even if somebody is in the limelight and as you say, it's acted out on a bigger stage, it's the same story. My beloved friend and co-founder of the Women's Media Center, Jane Fonda, has written very movingly about how she thought she was her own person 16 different times, and each time the bottom fell through, and until, as she puts it, her feminism became not intellectual but somatic. I mean, she finally got it in her gut, and from that point on, she hasn't stopped.
I know. In fact, when I read I know Jane somewhat with friends, and when I read her first memoir,
right,
I guess it was like my mouth was hanging open, because by Jane Fonda, I connected her with the women's movement.
Right.
I thought she stood up, and yet here I find that, she kind of morphed into whatever it was each man she was with wanted her to be.
Right.
And, that was comforting to me, actually.
Of course. Well, she was doing it on the outside. There was a period when I did that as well. I mean, she made feminist films. She did benefits.
Exactly.
But you carefully didn't let it into your own most vulnerable crazy making spaces. Tell me, I'm interested. You in all the years of your work life, your stellar work life, you collaborated with pretty much every performer and songwriter of that we admire and could mention. But I'm just wondering, working with or collaborating in different ways with Aretha, with Carole King, with Carly Simon. How was that different for you than collaborating with Neil Diamond or Bob Dylan or Ray Charles, etc.? I mean, was there a...
Well, certainly at the beginning, I wrote for quite some time with Melissa Manchester. And I believe that our songs kind of touched women in a certain way. Mm-hmm. That some of my later songs also did, but those songs, her early albums, and people used to come up to me years later and say, that song you wrote with Melissa Manchester got me through, my divorce, or got me through the worst time. And that's, of course, those were the words that I loved, and those were the feelings that's why I did it, to connect. My whole desire in life has been connection, and that's one of the reasons I wrote songs. So when people come up to you and tell you that your song got them through a tough time, then that's everything you've ever wanted to hear when you wrote it. One of the things I was going to say earlier when we were talking about Jane and women, is that I think women, and especially taking a look at my life, if they did when I was, 20, 25 and 35, probably would have said, "Oh my God, look at her life. I'll take that." And I one of the points that I make in the book is that I don't think people should compare their insides to other people's outsides, because you never really know what's going on inside of anyone else,
of course,
unless they share it with you. And so you make assumptions that often are completely untrue. And I know what my life looked like on the outside. It was glittery and star-filled, and best friends with Elizabeth Taylor, and friendly with Michael Jackson, and wow, but so much of that was, painful for me to just feel like I belonged.
Right.
And so I just wanted to share that, because I think other people have those feelings and think they're alone in them, because they're looking at other people's outsides. Well,
and we live in a celebrity-obsessed culture, too, which tries to sort of sell the message that, if you're famous, or if you have glitz and glam in your life, or if you're wealthy, you're a success. And that means happily ever after. And that's not true necessarily for anyone. Women in particular, because it all depends on the bargains they feel that they had to make in order to survive.
Well, that's exactly right.
I
totally get that. And it is survival. I mean, that's a wonderful word you used, Robin.
Yes.
Because it is about survival. It's this feeling that you can't even put one foot in front of the other. without a man or without a.
Right.
Yeah.
And we get it, in input into our little brains from the first pink blanket. So it's only now that we're beginning to see changes, and that's after 45 years of intensive feminist activism in this country, changing attitudes, which is even harder than changing laws. Changing laws is hard enough. The book is called They're Playing Our Song, a memoir. We've been talking with Carole Bayer Sager. And, Carly Simon said of this book that it's one of the best, most lasting songs that you've ever written. And I say,
that was lovely of her.
Hear, hear. And bravo for the courage and the lyricism in their playing our song. So thank you
so much.
Thank you, Carole, and thanks for the book and for being with us.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
And now it's time for the Surrealism Corner. We start in Israel, where, you would think that the government and the parliament, the Knesset, would have other things on their mind than this item. It's a serious region and serious stuff is going down. But you know what is really vexing members of the Israeli Knesset these days? The question, how short is a short skirt and who gets to decide? Dozens of female employees, staffers of members of the Knesset, arrived a week or so ago in above-the-knee attire to protest what they said was the Knesset guards' sudden eagerness to enforce a long-standing dress code. The Orthodox rabbinate weighed in, saying, of course, it's shocking to show the knee. Keep in mind that Israel is a very informal place in terms of dress, shorts, t-shirts, rarely ties for men, sandals. These are worn in the Knesset, and at weddings and at funerals. There was a rule at the Knesset that banned jeans in 2007, but they later reversed its course. So it's only apparently for women that to show the knee is a shocking thing. And one of the Knesset staff members said she might as well apply for a job at the Parliament of Iran, where they have an open dress code and enforce modesty on women's clothing, and maybe she should wear a burqa. In a related lateral leap incident, because it involves a former Israeli president, the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, the bromance partner of Donald Trump, Putin in 2006 expressed admiration for former Israeli President Moshe Katsav, who is a convicted rapist. This is what Putin said. What a powerful man he turned out to be, Katsav. He raped 10 women. I never would have expected that from him. He surprised us all. We are all so envious. Close quote. And in our last item, we go to Kellyanne Conway, the omnipresent Kellyanne Conway, who, in appearing on CNN, was asked by Chris Cuomo about Trump and about Trump's reaction to Meryl Streep's eloquent remarks about him at the Golden Globes. And Kellyanne replied, well, that's not what Trump meant about defaming the disabled reporter months ago. And finally she said this, quote, why don't you believe Trump? Why is everything taken at face value? You can't give him the benefit of the doubt on this, and he's telling you what was in his heart? You always want to go by what's come out of his mouth rather than what's in his heart. Period. Close quote. Well, Chris Cuomo was aghast, and so am I. Yes, Kellyanne, we actually do want to go by what comes out of his mouth and by his actions, because looking into his heart and the heart of darkness that must be there is, even for us, too surreal. It's time for another quick pause here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and when we come back in just a moment, we'll be speaking in a long-distance phone call to Hong Kong with a young legislator who got in trouble taking her seat after she was elected because of what she said about an overlord. She was in Hong Kong, the overlord was in China, and she's only 25 years old. You've read about her in the news, and she's coming up next.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And welcome back again. My next guest in a phone call all the way to Hong Kong is Regine Yau Wai-Ching. She is a Hong Kong politician, and she's only 25 years old. She's a member of the localist group Youngspiration, one word, Youngspiration, that leans toward Hong Kong independence. She was elected to the Legislative Council of Hong Kong as a member for Kowloon West in the 2016 Legislative Council election, but she has since been disqualified pursuant to a judgment delivered by the High Court on November 15th in 2016. She won the sixth and final seat in the Kowloon West constituency, and she became the youngest female member of the Legislative Council and its second youngest ever member, male or female. But she and another party colleague inserted her own words into the official script at their first meeting of the session, and they had their oaths rejected. We'll discuss just what they inserted into their oaths. As a result, though, their qualification as legislators was challenged by the government in court, and the National People's Congress Standing Committee intervened, that's China, by interpreting Article 104 of the Basic Law of Hong Kong to clarify the provision of the legislators to swear allegiance to Hong Kong as part of China when they take office. So on November 15th, she was disqualified, but she is fighting on. She is really a role model that we may need to follow here in the United States. And here is Regine Yau Wai-Ching, all the way from Hong Kong. Regine, welcome to the program.
Hello.
We're speaking to you. You're in Hong Kong now, and I would love for you to tell us what the real story is behind all the headlines about you. You ran for office from the Youngspiration Party, Young Inspiration.
Yes.
Yes. And you are campaigning for Hong Kong independence, and you were elected to the Legislative Council of Hong Kong as a member for Kowloon West. And then what?
Yes.
And then what happened?
In the off-taking session on October this year, after the session, the government tries to use some way to disqualify us, and the judges released the decision in November, and it shows that we should be disqualified according to the interpretation of the Basic Law 104. And so we were disqualified due to the juridical review, and we are going to appeal for the Court of Final Appeal for this case.
Mm-hmm. And when does it come to trial? When does it come to the court date?
It's not confirmed because we have to submit the documents before 28th this month. And so after we submit those court documents and after the approval from the court, then we can know the dates that we'll have the hearing session.
I see. And the Youngspiration group or party, that was born out of the Umbrella Revolution, right? I remember the Umbrella Revolution, but for my listeners who might not remember, tell about the Umbrella Revolution.
It was because of fake universal suffrage decision made by the NPC, and so many of the Hong Kongers were disappointed about the decision made by the NPC and also the Hong Kong government, because Hong Kong government takes a role that helps to push that kind of decision, and they try to make some Hong Kongers believe that it was a real one. And so many of those maybe pan-Democrats or some normal Hong Kongers like us participated in the Umbrella Revolution in 2014.
And that was when just thousands of people came out publicly into one of the major squares with carrying umbrellas.
Yes.
I remember the photographs. You just saw an ocean of umbrellas as a quiet protest. Is the Young Inspiration Party basically about independence for Hong Kong, or does it have other elements to its platform?
We believe that Hong Kongers are a nation which is different from the Chinese because of our different background. We have colonial history. We have different political and economic environment with China. And so we have a different living style. We have a different cultures. And so we should be, we have some difference between Hong Kongers and Chinese. But nowadays, what the Hong Kong government emphasizes is that we are the same. We are the same race. And so we have to be differentiated with each other. And so that we call out the Hong Kong nations. And to the problem of the future of Hong Kong, we think that it should be decided by the Hong Kong people. With reference to the failure of the one country, two system, Hong Kong independence is one of another possible choices for the Hong Kong people to choose. But the decision making is in the Hong Kongers' hand.
Interesting. So the two nations, one people, or two peoples, one nation is only part of the problem. You're after local decision making in Hong Kong, at least for starters.
Is mainly due to the conflict which is created by a different culture between Hong Kongers and the Chinese. Yes. Because many mainlanders will use one-way pass, and then they get into Hong Kong. They can immigrate into Hong Kong and then start their new life in Hong Kong. But they still using their own cultures, still using their own habits to communicate, or to just get familiar with their friends, but not other Hong Kongers. They don't know how to speak Cantonese. They don't know how to write a traditional Chinese, which is normally used in Hong Kong. And so, with their different cultures or different ideology, they always have some conflict with the local Hong Kongers. That's the main problem that occurred for several years, maybe starting from 2009 and 2010.
Right. In the handover, yeah. Well, having been to both China and Hong Kong, I not that one can know China in a visit or two, but having been to both, I can testify that there definitely is a difference. When you get to Hong Kong, it's a whole different world. Tell me, Regine. The news coverage of your campaign, your winning, and then you're being kept from you're being disqualified, focused on the fact that you and your party colleague Bajio Leung inserted your own words into the official oath that you take to hold office, and you were criticized for pronouncing China as China, which is a term considered negative, derogatory since the Second Sino-Japanese War, and you in particular deliberately mispronounced People's Republic of China as People's fucking government of China.
Yeah.
Was that true in the first place? And secondly, why did you do it? How do you answer your critics who would say, well, you gave them the perfect excuse not to seat you?
one point that I would want to emphasize is that we added some statement before the off-taking session that was a commitment between me and the Hong Kong people, which I thought that it was a duty for every legislators. It's because if we are reading through the statement of the off-taking session, it has a phrase of Hong Kong SAR. It has a phrase of basic law, but there was no people inside the statement. That was which I thought that is ridiculous, and so that's why we added some statement before the off-taking session. And if you are talking about the the phrases in my statement,
yes,
I may say that it is my impression towards the CCP government is because if we're looking through the history of CCP government when they were in the Second World War, you may say that they are manipulating the whole war, or they were making use of the sacrifice of their people, and then they may have their own military power soon after the Second World War, and they make use of the weapons that were left by the Japanese army, and then they would fight with the Kuomintang, and so they won the war, and then they could form their government due to this kind of reasons, which was my impression was that they don't treat the people as the one they should be served,
right,
but the one they should be sacrificed.
But you did know that it would. In other words, your critics. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Your critics would say, the minute that you used those terms, you knew that China would get upset, and would clamp down on you. Are you afraid for your freedom? Are you afraid for? You're going to court to try to regain your seat, but are you afraid?
I know very clear that I can't get back my seat after the court case. Even the court case will maybe once it wins that it will win a court case, but maybe I can't get back my seat.
Right.
But I have to tell the fact to the public.
You have to try
in Hong Kong.
Right.
Yeah, it's my duty for being a politician in Hong Kong due to the brainwashing education that the Hong Kong government practiced for many years.
Right. Yes. Wow. You've also made, I think, tremendous strides as a young woman. You were the second youngest member and the youngest female member of the Legislative Council, and on Hong Kong Island. And do you find sexism still alive and well in Hong Kong politics? Discrimination against women?
I think that the discrimination is not only for the woman, but also for the men. I think that due to the different point of view of politics, many people maybe have some attack towards their so-called enemies due to their different ideology towards what they're thinking about. And so I don't think it is a sexual problem, but it is the ideological problem instead.
And even within the Young Inspiration Party, you don't think that the guys discriminate against the girls? You don't think?
But the fact is that the girl may be more powerful than the man in Young Inspiration.
Well, maybe that's the reason that it's so courageous.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the reason. Well, we wish you luck. God knows what will happen, but I hope you stay safe, and I hope you regain your seat. And if not, I'm sure you will continue fighting for Hong Kong independence in other ways. Yes.
Maybe I have to find another way to continue our path. Not only me, but also young inspiration.
Yes. How old are you now, Jing?
25 years old.
Oh wow! Well, you have a long way to go. You have your whole life ahead of you. Congratulations! You are certainly the millennial with the most at this point. And thank you for being with us today. It's been difficult setting up and sustaining the call, but we have managed to do so, and I'm very grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Shay. One last break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll return directly with those fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back in time for some fighting words. This is an open letter to President Barack Hussein Obama. Dear President Obama, oh hell, we're going to miss you. It was going to be so perfect. After you, the first African American, the first woman, one barrier after another falling, and it wasn't just the barrier breaking, although that was historic and cleansing and alive with hope. It's that it was going to be that particular woman, stupendously well qualified and progressive. Just as you weren't simply the first African American president, you've been Barack Hussein Obama in all his brilliance, his no-drama calm. This, then, is to thank you. In 2008, I voted for Hillary in the primaries, but voted for you after that twice, and haven't regretted it. Not until it was too late did you ever toot your own horn, though. So I will. The jobless rate is down to 4.6%, which almost qualifies as full employment. The economy has grown and is now significantly larger than it was before the Great Recession. You signed into law the Lilly Ledbetter Act, another step forward to equal pay for women. The stock market is at an all-time high. More importantly, the high school graduation rate is at an all-time high. Crime and health care inflation are near historic lows, as are oil imports, so we're less dependent on foreign fuels, and as are abortions lower, due to greater availability of contraceptives and sex education. Carbon emissions are falling, so is illegal immigration. But renewable power is rising, and retirement assets and auto sales have skyrocketed. The once fragile Medicare trust fund has stabilized. Because of you and your bully pulpit, same-sex lovers now have marriage equality. We've drawn down the troops from wars we shouldn't have entered to begin with and seem unable to extricate ourselves from now. You had the temerity and the smarts to invite Hillary Rodham Clinton to be your first Secretary of State, and she had the temerity and smarts to accept. Together you set the stage for the Iran nuclear agreement and for the Paris climate agreement. Together you got Osama bin Laden. You opened up relations to Cuba, sensibly noting that to keep repeating the same unsuccessful strategy over and over is one definition of insanity. You preserved more natural land and sea territory via the park system, safe from development and mining, than any president since Theodore Roosevelt. You welcomed the dreamers and tried to protect the immigrant community, imperfectly, yes, but better than had been done previously. Time and again you came to the microphone with tears in your voice to comfort families blasted apart by the epidemic of gun availability and violence. You gave us one of the most memorable moments in American history, breaking into song, Amazing Grace, at a memorial service in Mother Emanuel Church. You lived on a tightrope, continuously, relentlessly having to balance between your honorable pledge to be president of all Americans and all the pressures, internal as well as external, to be the president of still suffering black Americans who looked to you as their superhero. And you accomplished what 7 presidents had tried and failed to pull off. However flawed and attacked, and however it may be gutted or even destroyed in the future, you gave this country the beginnings of a national health care system that has already saved hundreds of thousands of lives. Somewhere in all this, oh my God, you managed to stop smoking. But you started lots of other things. You grew into the office, and it grew into you. You stood at the presidential lectern, pointed to yourself, grinned, and proclaimed to the world, "This is what a feminist looks like." You were open about your love and reverence for the arts, and you brought the massive past and present contributions of black American artists into high relief. A fatherless kid yourself, you made it clear that being a father, that parenting, was central to your chosen identity. Simply by being America's first family for 8 years, you, the remarkable Michelle Robinson Obama, and your daughters Sasha and Malia changed consciousness forever, redefining beauty, power, race, class, and family itself. I confess that it was delicious to think that on one of those nights after a Kennedy Center Awards gala or a state dinner where you and Michelle looked gorgeous and danced together and seemed to actually enjoy it, to think that the first couple, still young and with a twinkle in the eye, might actually make love in the presidential bed. Not all that common an occurrence in the White House, I would think. On your watch, we became again the world's richest, most powerful nation. On your watch, we regained the respect of the rest of the world. This past week gave us side-by-side comparisons of 2 men, one a president and commander-in-chief about to leave office, the other a press conference denouncing fake news by real journalists done by a man entering office as a fake president, a fake commander-in-chief. We're familiar with the concept of contempt of court, and the concept of contempt of Congress, but we had not yet until now encountered someone exhibiting contempt of the presidency, and we hardly expected it from a so-called president-elect. The body language difference alone tells the story. Trump, stocky, stiff, overweight, lurching forward, full of gestures and twitches, punctuating yet disconnected from the content of what he was saying, hectoring and bullying, repetitive, ungrammatical, and, of course, spewing comments soaked in lies and in bile, defensiveness, and self-obsession. This was the image that shockingly followed yours the night before in your farewell address. A man slender, lithe, at ease in his own skin, casually loping on stage with that somewhat sexy, slim-hipped swing that made him so cool, a man who spoke with wit and eloquence, with substance and dignity, a man who still dared audaciously to hope, and the man who was unashamed to cry openly when speaking with love about the sacrifices made for his presidency by his wife and about his pride in his daughters. That was more than the model of a president. That was a model of manhood. So thank you, Mr. President. Rest and sleep for a month, as you said you longed to do. But don't take too long off, because we need you on the front lines, fighting for and with us. We need your intellectual elegance and your gritty, irrepressible capacity for hope. Besides, you already were the first black editor of the Harvard Law Review, the first black president of the United States for 2 terms yet, and you're a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, and only now 55 years old. So what are you going to do in the prime of life? When we met, I looked up at you, craning my neck at your tallness, and said, "Don't let the bastards get you down, Mr. President." And you laughed and promised you wouldn't. You haven't. Barack Hussein Obama, I hope you have the most active and constructive post-presidency in the history of this nation. and I'll see you on the barricades with the rest of us. With love and gratitude to you and to your family, Mr. President. Robin Morgan. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter, and be sure to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag Fighting Words. And that's it for today. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMClive.com for the show, plus the archive of all our previous episodes, and at iTunes Worldwide, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to our show's podcast. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter. And you can check out my own website and blog at robinmorgan.net and find me on Facebook and Twitter, too. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton, and our founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us, and don't forget to join us next week right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.